Whispers around the block say Papoose is about to be exposed for something so ugly, so grimy, so buried under years of hip-hop's dirtiest laundry, that even 50 Cent, the man who eats reputations for breakfast, might actually be the one telling the truth this whole time. And baby, if what's leaking out about Papoose right now is real, then everything you thought you knew about Clarissa Shields, about that fairy tale ring, about that queen and king energy they've been selling y'all on Instagram, all of it is a lie stitched together with rented smiles and a whole lot of financial camouflage. Listen up, y'all, because the audio that allegedly exists on a police dispatch call, the audio that TMZ allegedly held for less than 24 hours before it mysteriously vanished, the audio that a woman on Mr. Skinny TV swears she filled out paperwork to hear with her own 2 ears, that audio is about to change everything you feel about Papoose, about Clarissa, about Remy Ma, and about the entire ecosystem that let a man like Papoose float on the labor of 2 of the most powerful women in his orbit for damn near 2 decades. Alleged, y'all alleged. But every alleged in this story has receipts standing behind it like security at the club, and I'm about to walk you through every single one. Grab your pillow, pull up your chair, and lock in, because this is not the usual back and forth. This is not the usual 50 Cent trolling. This is the full autopsy of a man who was carried by Remy Ma, who is now being carried by Clarissa Shields, and who, according to a growing chorus of voices, has a very specific pattern that keeps showing up whenever a woman in his life gets too loud, too visible, too independent, or too close to the truth. And when 50 Cent, the culture's most surgical exposer, decided to slice into this couple, he didn't just come with jokes. He came with a scalpel. He came with old footage. He came with Maserati Bert. He came with a Bernie Mac reference so nasty it left Papoose gasping for a comeback that never landed. And now, 5 days ago, 50 said the words that lit the fuse all over again. Nah, man, that mother handsome. She looked like AB. That single line is what pulled Clarissa Shields back into the ring. And she came swinging. Anyhow, sis, let me set the table for the ones just tuning in. Clarissa Shields, arguably the greatest female boxer this country has ever produced, got caught in a crossfire she never should have been near. It started, as most 50 Cent wars do, with a comment on Instagram. A little jab, a little poke, the kind of thing 50 does to see who bites. And Papoose, according to Papoose himself, has been catching these little pokes from 50 Cent for years. Papoose said 50 came at him back when Papoose was viral, when Papoose was in every magazine, when Papoose was in every corner of hip-hop media. Papoose said he ignored 50 the first time, ignored 50 the second time, and then finally, on the third pass, Papoose said enough. And Papoose fired back. That was years ago. But 50 Cent, as everybody with a functioning pulse knows by now, does not forget. 50 Cent does not let go. 50 Cent files everything away in a mental Rolodex and pulls it back out at the exact moment it will do the most damage. Now peep this. When 50 Cent came back around on New Year's Day 2026, he did not come for Papoose alone. 50 Cent came for Clarissa Shields too. 50 posted something disrespectful about both of them, and Papoose said the phone started blowing up before he'd even finished his coffee. Papoose said he told Clarissa, "Baby, I got it. You in training camp. Let me handle it." And Clarissa said, "Nah." Clarissa said, "I'm gonna handle it too." And that right there, that single decision, that refusal to let her man handle a man-to-man beef, is the exact hinge on which this entire disaster swings. Because the moment Clarissa Shields opened her mouth to 50 Cent, she opened a door that 50 Cent had been waiting years to walk through. And 50 didn't just walk through it. 50 kicked it off the hinges. Matter of fact, before 50 even had to lift a finger, Maserati Bert walked through that door first. Maserati Bert, a name that meant nothing to most of us 6 months ago, is now sitting on what looks like a full portfolio of footage of Clarissa Shields. Clarissa in Maserati Bert's shower. Clarissa in Maserati Bert's car. Clarissa on the phone with Papoose while Maserati Bert filmed her from the other side of the room. Clarissa singing, dancing, moving around Maserati Bert's space in a way no woman moves around a fan. Because let's be honest, no man alive lets a fan bounce around his living room in pajamas while she's on the phone with her fiancé. That's not how fans behave. That's not how homeowners behave. That's how something else behaves entirely. And Maserati Bert said, I've got more where that came from. He said, stop playing with me, man. I'll keep releasing videos. Clarissa denied it. Clarissa said on camera, I have never been romantically, sexually, nothing with this man. Never kissed him, never hugged him too hard. And Clarissa said 50 Cent was about to get sued for spreading a lie. Except, come to find out, Clarissa never actually filed. That lawsuit never actually happened. That threat evaporated the moment 50 Cent kept posting, the moment Maserati Bert kept dripping, the moment the receipts kept stacking. And that is a pattern we're going to circle back to, because Clarissa Shields threatens legal action the way most people threaten to unfriend somebody on Facebook. A lot of talk, very little paperwork. But here is where this story cracks wide open and stops being about 50 Cent altogether. Because you cannot understand what is happening to Clarissa Shields right now without first understanding what happened to Remy Ma. And you cannot understand what happened to Remy Ma without understanding the man who has now attached himself to Clarissa's career, Papoose. Because whispers around the block say Papoose has a habit. Whispers around the block say Papoose has a pattern. And whispers around the block say the reason Papoose keeps ending up with women who out-earn him, outshine him, and out-carry him is because Papoose knows exactly how to find a woman whose light is bright enough to hide his own darkness inside of. Peep this, Remy Ma, on her own social media, in her own words, said, play with police, Papoose. You forgot the pool never got finished being remodeled because you were attacking me in a garage and the workers called the cops to get you off of me. Alleged, y'all alleged. But those are Remy's words. Not a blog's words. Not a fan account. Not a Reddit thread. Remy Ma. The woman who did 6 years in prison and never once flinched. The woman who has stared down bigger ops than Papoose could ever dream of. That woman said her fiancé, the father of her child, was pulled off of her by construction workers. And Papoose has never, not once, publicly denied it. He shifted the conversation. He talked about divorce paperwork. He talked about the split. He talked about the money. But he never looked into a camera and said, I did not touch that woman. Because that video, according to a woman who called into Mr. Skinny TV, that video exists. That call to the police exists. That dispatch audio exists. And it was allegedly on TMZ for less than a day before it was pulled down and buried. Now, do I have that audio in my hand right now? No, I don't. And I'm going to be honest with y'all the same way I always am. I'm not going to sit here and swear something is real that I have not heard with my own ears. But what I can tell you is this. When multiple people, across multiple platforms, across multiple years, all keep circling around the exact same accusation about the exact same man, at some point, the smoke stops being smoke and starts being the outline of a fire. Come to find out, this same pattern is playing out again, this time with Clarissa Shields. That same caller on Mr. Skinny TV said there was footage coming of Papoose putting hands on Clarissa. Said it plain. Said it clear. Now, has that footage dropped? Not yet. And maybe it never will. Maybe the woman was lying. Maybe she was performing. Maybe she was chasing clout. All of those are possibilities. But here is what is not a possibility. Here is what is a hard, cold, documented fact. Clarissa Shields is a woman with more physical training, more championship belts, and more raw fighting ability than 99.9% of the men on this planet. And yet, when 50 Cent started coming at her, when Maserati Bert started dripping footage, when the internet started laughing, Clarissa Shields never once looked or sounded like a woman being protected. She sounded like a woman defending herself. Alone. And that is the loudest silence Papoose has ever made. Now, back up with me for a second, because I need y'all to sit with this. Papoose, before he was Mr. Clarissa Shields, was Mr. Remy Ma. And when I say Mr. Remy Ma, I do not mean it as a compliment. I mean it as a demographic classification. Because Remy Ma, in her own words, on her own show, on national television, admitted that she paid every single bill in that household. Every one. Remy paid the mortgage. Remy paid the cars. Remy paid the vacations. Remy bought her own push gift after giving birth to their child. Remy bought her own push gift. Let that land. A woman came home from a hospital, holding a newborn baby, and had to reach into her own account to buy herself the gift that a husband is traditionally supposed to give her as a thank you for carrying his child. And Papoose has never denied that either. Papoose has never once said, actually, I was the provider. Papoose has never once produced a receipt showing he covered a mortgage payment, a car note, a light bill. Not one. So what does a man do when his entire lifestyle is built on the back of a woman who could evict him with a phone call? He does one of two things. He either humbles himself and appreciates every single crumb she gives him, or he starts looking for other ways to feel powerful. And when a man like that cannot feel powerful in his wallet, he starts trying to feel powerful in his fists. Alleged, y'all alleged. But every psychologist worth their salt will tell you the same thing. The most dangerous man in the world is not the man with all the power. The most dangerous man in the world is the man who feels like he has none and is desperate to reclaim it. There is actually a name for this in the academic literature. It's called precarious manhood theory. Womanhood, according to sociologists, is generally viewed as a permanent state. You are born a woman, you exist as a woman, and society does not require you to constantly prove it. But manhood, according to that same body of research, is treated as something a man has to earn, defend, and re-earn every single day. And when a man feels his manhood is under threat, when his wife pays the bills, when his fiancée is a world champion, when his stepdaughter watches him fold laundry while another man drops a diss track that goes viral, that man enters what psychologists call precarious manhood panic. And in precarious manhood panic, some men rise to the challenge, humble themselves, and find peace in a non-traditional role. But other men lash out. Other men grip harder. Other men, when they cannot dominate the checking account, try to dominate the woman standing next to it. Anyhow, sis, this brings us back to Clarissa Shields. Because Clarissa Shields is the exact type of woman a precarious manhood panicked man would attach himself to. Clarissa is a champion. Clarissa is loud. Clarissa is rich. Clarissa is stubborn. Clarissa is a woman who, by her own admission and by the visible frustration of everyone around her, does not listen. Not to her team. Not to her manager. Not to her PR people. Not to Papoose. And when Papoose himself sat in that interview and said, I told her to ignore it. I told her to focus on training. I got it. Let me handle it. And Clarissa still went on the internet and started swinging at 50 Cent anyway. Papoose looked into that camera with the tired eyes of a man who has had this exact conversation before, with a different woman, in a different decade, to the same conclusion. Now peep this, because this is the part that nobody is talking about. When 50 Cent posted that AI-generated clip of Papoose and Clarissa's faces stitched onto the 1976 blaxploitation film Remy Ma, Black Sister's Revenge, Papoose in his interview said something extremely revealing. Papoose said, he didn't even make that. He reposted it. But because he reposted it, everybody blames him for it. And in that one moment, Papoose accidentally showed his entire hand. Because that is the exact same excuse Papoose has used his whole career. Somebody else did it. Somebody else said it. Somebody else made it. But I'm the one catching the blame. It is the same excuse he used when Remy said he never paid rent. It is the same excuse he used when the divorce paperwork started making rounds. It is the same excuse he is using now, as Maserati Bert releases footage that Papoose himself cannot explain. Somebody else. Somebody else. Always somebody else. Never Papoose. Matter of fact, let me take y'all back to the origin of this whole 50 Cent war, because it did not start with Clarissa. It started with Papoose. On a Mini-Man instrumental, Papoose came for Curtis Jackson with lines so surgical that even 50 Cent had to acknowledge the craftsmanship. Papoose rapped about ugly G-Unit sneakers. Papoose rapped about a certain party where Diddy allegedly hit 50's chick and the neighbors heard the slap. Papoose rapped about get rich or die trying, becoming the last thing 50 ever did that mattered. Papoose rapped, 50, you a petty son of a Bernie Mac, killing this Sophie Lauren Hill, Roberta Flack. That was a strike. That was a real strike. And in a normal beef, in a normal universe, that strike would have earned Papoose respect. But this is not a normal universe. This is 50 Cent's universe. And in 50 Cent's universe, the moment you throw a bar at him, he opens up his personal file cabinet, the one where he keeps every skeleton every rapper has ever left in his walk-in, and he starts unpacking. He unpacked Maserati Bert. He unpacked the shower footage. He unpacked the Joyride video. He unpacked Clarissa's dating history. He unpacked every rumor about Clarissa having one foot in one bed and one foot in another. He unpacked the age gap. He unpacked the granddaddy nickname that Clarissa herself, in her own words, on her own social media, calls Papoose. This is your granddaddy. This is your granddaddy. Your granddaddy. She said it herself. Y'all heard her. She said it about her own fiancé on a public platform, and then she got mad when the internet ran with it. And listen, I am not the type to jump in a woman's business and tell her who to love. If Clarissa Shields wants to marry a man old enough to be her father, that's her prerogative. But you cannot call the man granddaddy on the internet and then get furious when the internet calls him granddaddy back. You cannot post the joke and then be mad it landed. That is not how public discourse works. That is not how the internet works. That is not how 50 Cent works. Now peep this. Maserati Bert, according to Clarissa herself, was a fan. He came up to her at an event. He asked for a picture. And then, in her own words, he went from there to something else. That single phrase, he went from there to something else, is the linguistic equivalent of a woman quietly admitting that yes, something did happen, but no, she doesn't want to fully own it out loud. Because if a man is truly, definitively, only ever a fan, then he doesn't go from there to somewhere else. He stays a fan. He remains a fan. He is filed under fan and never refiled. But Clarissa's own words tell a different story. And Maserati Bert's footage tells a different story. And Papoose's tired eyes in that interview tell a different story. Anyhow, sis, this is where the layers really start peeling. Because there is a caller on Mr. Skinny TV, a caller I want y'all to remember, who said something on May 30th of this year that has haunted me ever since I heard it. She said there is audio of a police dispatch call, allegedly from inside Remy Ma's house, allegedly showing that Papoose physically attacked Remy. She said she personally filled out the paperwork to access the dispatch record. She said she heard it with her own ears. She said TMZ posted it briefly, then took it down. She said Harvey Levin, the same Harvey Levin who built his entire brand on refusing to post unverified material, allegedly had it up long enough for insiders to see it before it was pulled. Now, did any of us catch that TMZ post? I searched. I searched hard. I searched every platform, every archive, every corner of the internet a story like that could hide in, and I could not find it. Which means one of two things. Either the caller was lying, and this entire allegation is a piece of aggressive fan fiction being weaponized against Papoose. Or, the caller was telling the truth, and somebody, somewhere, with enough power and enough money, made that clip go away before it could take root. Both are possibilities. Both are on the table, and I am not going to sit here and swear which one is real. But I will tell you this. I have been in this game long enough to know that when a story goes viral on the internet, screenshots survive. Archives survive. Reposts survive. Nothing dies on the internet. Nothing. Unless somebody with real leverage kills it. And if that TMZ post was ever real, its total disappearance is arguably the loudest evidence in this entire story. Come to find out, this same caller then pivoted the conversation. She started talking about Clarissa being a pimp. She started talking about Clarissa being a gangster. She started running her mouth in every direction, on every topic, with the kind of scattershot delivery that makes credible people sound crazy. And that is exactly what raised my eyebrow. Because a person telling the truth, a person who has actually seen, heard, and filed paperwork on a story of this magnitude, does not need to jump topics. They do not need to embellish. They stay locked on the one bombshell they have, and they let the bombshell speak for itself. This caller did the opposite. And that pattern, the pattern of over-talking, of moving too fast, of adding unnecessary embellishments, is the exact pattern of someone who is either lying or telling the truth so badly that no jury on earth would believe them. But here is what I cannot ignore. Even if the caller is completely wrong about Clarissa, her core claim about Remy Ma is corroborated by Remy Ma's own words. Remy Ma, on her own social media, said Papoose was pulled off of her in a garage. Remy Ma, in her own words, said workers called the cops. And Papoose, in his own silence, has never denied it. And silence, in the court of public opinion, is a form of confession. Now peep this, because this is where 50 Cent shows exactly why he is the general he is. 50 Cent did not attack Papoose randomly. 50 Cent attacked Papoose because Papoose attacked him first. And when Papoose came with bars about Diddy, about the neighbors, about the slap. Papoose came with lines that implicated the very industry that 50 Cent has spent a decade positioning himself as the last honest voice in. And 50, being 50, did the only thing 50 knows how to do. He mapped Papoose's entire circle. He identified the weakest link, which turned out to be Clarissa's proximity to Maserati Bert, and he detonated it. That is not trolling. That is not clownery. That is warfare. That is a man who has watched every hip-hop beef of the last 20 years and reverse-engineered the exact algorithm for destroying a rapper without ever recording a diss track. 50 Cent does not need to rap anymore. 50 Cent has weaponized the repost button. Matter of fact, this is the part that most commentators are missing entirely. 50 Cent is not the villain in this story. 50 Cent is the accelerant. The villain, if there is one, is the pattern. The pattern of Papoose attaching himself to women whose careers dwarf his own, sitting quietly in the background collecting benefits, and then, allegedly, allegedly, turning violent the moment those women assert independence. Remy asserted independence. Remy allegedly caught hands. Clarissa is now asserting independence. Clarissa, according to a caller nobody can fully verify, is allegedly catching hands too. That is not a coincidence. That is a rhythm. And rhythms don't lie. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. Could the caller be a paid actor with an agenda? Absolutely. Could Papoose be the most misunderstood man in hip-hop, quietly weathering 2 decades of professional envy from women who out-earned him and now out-punch him? Sure. That is theoretically possible. But when Andre Dorrell, an actual former world champion boxer, a man who trained alongside Clarissa Shields, a man whose career overlapped with hers at the highest level, publicly said, when she was Drake, when she was a real man, that goes out to Papoose. You should probably listen. Because Andre Dorrell is not a gossip blogger. Andre Dorrell is not a caller on a live stream. Andre Dorrell is a professional in Clarissa's world, and he is telling the truth about Papoose in language so pointed it cannot be mistaken. Anyhow, sis, let me pull the thread all the way through, because I want y'all to understand exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. When a man builds his entire adult life on a woman's income, when he wakes up every morning in a house that woman paid for, drives a car that woman leased, eats food that woman bought, that man is either extraordinarily secure in his masculinity, or he is a walking time bomb of resentment. And you can usually tell which one he is by how he acts in interviews. Papoose, in every single interview I have ever seen, has deferred to the woman sitting next to him. Every single one. When Remy was next to him, he said, "I'll let you answer, love." When Clarissa is next to him, he says nothing at all. That is not confidence. That is a man who has been trained to disappear on camera because his voice does not carry the weight the room requires. And come to find out, and this is the part that is going to piss some of y'all off, that same dynamic is being reproduced in real time. Clarissa Shields is now paying, publicly, for a lifestyle that Papoose could not afford on his best day. Clarissa is training, fighting, promoting, monetizing, and building. And Papoose is where he has always been, in the background, occasionally posting, occasionally interviewing, occasionally reminding the world that he is here. And when 50 Cent showed up on New Year's Day 2026 and posted his little comment, Papoose did what Papoose always does. He tried to control the narrative from the sidelines. And Clarissa, being loud, being independent, being a champion, refused to be controlled from the sidelines. And that refusal is going to cost her more than anybody currently understands. Peep this. The divorce between Papoose and Remy Ma is still technically not finalized. Papoose is engaged to Clarissa, but Papoose is not yet legally free from Remy. And Remy, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, is holding the receipts of an entire era of Papoose's life that Clarissa Shields has apparently never bothered to review. Because if Clarissa had reviewed those receipts, if Clarissa had watched the interviews, read the deposition-adjacent leaks, listened to Remy's own words on Remy's own platforms, Clarissa would not be in this position right now. Clarissa would have known that a man with this many alleged patterns does not simply stop patterning. Patterns are patterns because they repeat. Now, listen, I want to be careful here, because there is a real difference between exposing a documented abuser and speculating about a man's private life based on a caller nobody can name. And I refuse to be the person who says something I cannot back with my own 2 eyes and my own 2 ears. But what I can back is this, Remy Ma's own words. Papoose's own silence. Maserati Bert's own footage. 50 Cent's own receipts. Andre Dorrell's own comments. And a pattern that has been repeating in plain sight for damn near 2 decades, while everybody around it politely looked the other way. Anyhow, sis, the last thing I want to leave y'all with is this. There is a caller on the Hood Champion show. A caller who was ostensibly on the phone to spill tea about something entirely unrelated, who kept redirecting the conversation to Clarissa being a pimp, Clarissa being a gangster, Clarissa doing this, Clarissa doing that. She could not stay on subject to save her life. And Hood Champion, live on air, wore the exact same expression of confusion that Mr. Skinny TV wore when his own caller did the same thing. That is not coincidence. That is a coordinated smear campaign, and it is being run by somebody who wants Clarissa Shields dragged through as many mud puddles as possible before her next fight, before her next payday, before her next endorsement deal. Somebody is pulling the strings. And I have some educated guesses about who that somebody is. But I am not going to say the name out loud, because I do not have the paperwork. And I refuse to be the person who accuses somebody of something I cannot prove. But here is what I can prove. I can prove that Papoose has been publicly named in an allegation of physical violence by his own wife. I can prove that 50 Cent has, without question, embarrassed Papoose in a way that Papoose has never publicly recovered from. I can prove that Clarissa Shields' team is not listening to her, or she is not listening to them, or both. I can prove that Maserati Bert has more footage than he has released. I can prove that Andre Dorrell said what he said. And I can prove that the woman on Mr. Skinny TV made the claims she made, whether or not those claims are ultimately true. And so here is the question I need y'all to sit with, because this is the question that keeps me up at night. If Clarissa Shields, the greatest female boxer of her generation, a woman with more physical capability than most professional men, is truly, secretly, quietly a victim of what that caller alleged, then what does that tell us about the machinery of hip-hop, of celebrity, of the power couple branding industry that would let a story like this be buried? What does it tell us about TMZ, about the blogs, about the platforms, about the same media ecosystem that broke Cassie's story and Megan's story and every other high-profile woman in crisis story of the last 5 years? Why is Clarissa's story, if it exists, apparently the one they are all refusing to touch? And more importantly, what does it tell us about Papoose? A man who, in his own words, in his own interviews, has never once stood in front of a camera and said, "I have never put my hands on a woman." Not once. He has denied specific incidents. He has denied specific dates. He has denied specific paperwork. But he has never made the blanket, unambiguous, on-the-record declaration that a man with a clean conscience would make in his sleep. And that omission, that specific, calculated, lawyerly silence, is louder than any diss track 50 Cent could ever record. Anyhow, sis, I'm going to leave the receipts here for y'all to sort through in the comments. But I need y'all to understand something before you scroll. This is not about picking sides. This is not about 50 Cent versus Papoose, or Remy versus Clarissa, or team this versus team that. This is about a pattern that has been sitting in plain sight for years, and the moment 50 Cent decided to point at it, everybody around it started running for cover. That is not the behavior of innocent people. That is the behavior of people who know exactly what is in the closet and are terrified of the door opening. So talk to me down below. Do y'all believe the caller on Mr. Skinny TV? Do y'all believe Remy Ma? Do y'all believe Andre Dorrell? Do y'all believe Maserati Bert has more footage stashed away? And, most importantly, do y'all believe Clarissa Shields is safe right now, tonight, in whatever house she is currently sharing with a man old enough to be her granddaddy and allegedly hot-tempered enough to be dangerous? Drop your thoughts. Drop your receipts. Drop your prayers. And whatever you do, do not stop watching this story, because I have a feeling the audio the caller mentioned, the audio TMZ allegedly buried, is not going to stay buried forever. Nothing on the internet ever does. And when that clip finally surfaces, I want y'all right here, in this community, ready to break it down together. Do not forget to like this video. Do not forget to subscribe. Do not forget to hit that bell, so you are the first to know the second this thing cracks open. And most of all, do not forget who was telling y'all the truth about Papoose before the truth was popular. Because when the smoke clears, when the paperwork drops, when the dispatch audio inevitably leaks, I want y'all to remember that this channel, this pillow, this community, This circle of grown women who see everything and forget nothing, called it first. Alleged, y'all alleged. But alleged has a funny way of turning into confirmed the longer you sit with it. Talk to me down below, and I will see you in the comments.